Hello, I'm Ariane Lacra. I'm part of World Music 462 for music majors, and I'm here today to give a presentation on traditional Cahuilla music and Cahuilla birdsongs. Thank you for coming to my talk. Here we go. All right, so who are the Cahuilla people? The Cahuilla people are a federally recognized indigenous tribe of Southern California. They're mostly located in the Palm Springs and San Bernardino and San Diego areas, kind of historically inland compared to some of the other Native American tribes and nations around here. They spoke Cahuilla language, part of the Uto-Aztecan family of languages. And their first encounter was relatively late with Europeans. It started out with coming into contact with Spaniards in the 1770s, and then in the early 1800s, their first encounter with Anglo settlers. And here below, you can see the region of California on the left where the Cahuilla people lived historically, and then kind of diving deeper into that yellow region from the left, you can see exactly where there were settlements and villages on the right. All right, so a huge part of the issues that Cahuilla people today are faced with is confronting their past and present history of erasure of traditional cultural practices. The language is critically endangered. There are fewer than 20 fluent Cahuilla language speakers alive today, which is a problem that USC and especially Cahuilla people are working hard to address. Miners, ranchers, and missionaries in the past few hundred years had a devastating effect on the Cahuilla people. Lots of Cahuilla were just stripped of their lands, and they felt that they needed to assimilate out of a need for survival. So there was a lot of intermarriage with Spanish and Anglo settlers. The government broke its treaty promises, only having very recently returned some of the promised lands and territories over to the Cahuilla people, notably in Palm Springs. And they really had to fight for sovereignty during the Native American genocide. Picture on the right is Alvino Silva, or actually Siva, that's a typo, sorry, a late Cahuilla tribal elder who was one of the last remaining fluent speakers of the language, and he was especially interested in preserving the rich oral traditions of the bird songs. So the cultural significance of Cahuilla bird songs, before we get into what they actually sound like, they were considered a social song, one that brought Cahuilla people together, and these still do to this day. They're called bird songs not because the songs are about birds, but because the songs together, in their song cycles, tell a story of Cahuilla creation, the creation of the Cahuilla people. And the universe, migration, and unity. The people have traditionally used birdsong and dance in order to tell the story of their creation from specifically hot springs, especially the Aguas Calientes Cahuilla people. Birdsong and dance also portray an ancient journey according to a story told that the Cahuilla people were actually a lost people searching for their home. As they cried and prayed to their gods to guide them home, one of the gods gave them these bird songs to help guide them home. And this is a very symbolic story that many Cahuilla people alive today say is highly relevant to their lived experience. This is one of the last remaining cultural relics that they have to look back on their past with. And so in a way, these songs are pretty grounding and guide them to a sense of home and belonging and a sense of place and identity. Here's the first example of a Cahuilla bird song. I'll pause it there and keep going to example number 2. Here's another one that, unlike the other one, which featured just men, this one features both male and female vocals, and you can also see the dancing that's accompanying the song at a powwow.
What you're hearing now is the Cahuilla Birdsongs. It's Robert Levi, it's Vito Siva, and Mr. Victor Grace. They're the ones that made it possible for us to be singing the Cahuilla songs that we have left. So that's what you're hearing tonight. So on this session, I want to give recognition to the people that made it possible.
All right, in the interest of time, we'll pause it there. And continue. Right. So musical features of the Cahuilla Birdsongs we just heard, as well as most of the others. It features something that ethnomusicologists like to call a California rise, which is a characteristic of many indigenous songs of the area around California, where you start on a home note, kind of like a tonic, rise up to a pitch above that home note, and then return back down to the home pitch. As you could hear there and see in the second example, as well as here in the first, there's rhythmic rattle playing pretty much on every single beat. Strong rattling on the strong beat and weaker rattling on each weak beat. It's also used as a source of punctuation for phrases when you're not singing lyrics. At certain moments it's just one beat of the rattle before you start singing again. Lots of nonverbal vocables used in some of these, as well as lyrics in the Cahuilla language. The songs are commonly monophonic, but also include some interjection. The melodies are mostly pentatonic with some microtonal deviations, notably when there is a stressed syllable, the booming voices of the men, and maybe to some extent the women too, seem to deviate a little bit from the actual pitch as a way to accent it, like tonally accent that accented note. They're usually in simple meter, but not always. There's a lot of call and response in these bird songs, okay? And the male vocals are often low pitched, very rich tone and booming and very impassioned. The female vocals, of course, are in a higher register. Accompanying dances, as you might have seen in example 2, we have the sort of two-step shifting weight from one foot to the other, especially at the beginning of bird songs that are a little bit less intense, but as the repetition of these verses and song cycles continues, the dancing gets more and more intense, which is really cool and spiritually unifying. More involved dance involves more use of the arms, more head and body rotation, turns, more complex foot work and steps. And again, this dance is used to kind of give a visual storytelling of the Cahuilla people's creation and their ancient journey to where they reside today. The dances are pretty much inseparable from the bird songs, although sometimes Cahuilla bird singers do line up just in a straight line with their rattles and pretty much only sing and do a really subtle two-step maybe with not much dance. All right, so the Cahuilla gourd rattles, they're made of gourds, lots of which are actually harvested in a farm in the Temecula area. From a young age, Cahuilla children are taught not to use these rattles as toys, rather to revere them and regard them as sacred objects that need the utmost care. There's a 3 to 6 month drying process of the gourds before they can be made into Cahuilla rattles. After the gourds are thoroughly dried, you remove the webbing and seeds to clear everything out from the inside, but then insert like about 30 palm seeds. If you put too many, then that'll be disruptive and cause undesired amounts of noise during the performances, so you only want just a few, not too many. You glue the gourd to a handle and maybe provide additional security by tying the handle to the gourd with leather or suede string. Okay. Despite the fact that there has been profound cultural erasure of the Cahuilla traditions and heritage and practices, there's been a very recent revival that is the result of an intergenerational effort to preserve these Cahuilla practices, including bird song, dance, and even other things, language, basket weaving, pottery, and food preparation too. So in spite of all of the collective psychological trauma of the Native American genocide, the Cahuilla people have risen up and continue to be really resilient, especially the young children many of whom attend Cahuilla singing classes where they learn to sing and dance these rich oral histories and traditions of their people. So aside from Cahuilla Birdsong, There are also language classes offered in a variety of settings, including notably at the University of Southern California to preserve the Cahuilla language that's dying out. You can take classes in traditional food preparation if you are of Cahuilla heritage. You can take pottery classes, archery, not to mention all the sort of natural activities and restoration projects of some of these territories, and of course, bird singing classes with dance.